Hello everybody, in today's video I'm going to show you how you can create buildings in Blender, and this technique is very good when you want buildings in the background, so they shouldn't be very detailed but rather easy to make and fast to render. And yeah, this method is good for it, and I use it often when building like cityscapes where the entire background is full of buildings but probably very blurry and not very detailed. So the basic technique behind this method is that we have a very simple geometry, like for example this cube, and then we project a texture that we will create right now on the faces. So that's very easy to render for the computer, and we can make it detailed with the texture. So we will delete everything, and now first of all, as said, we will create the pattern that we want to project on our geometry, and we want to create one simple cell of the entire texture, and we want it to make seamless, so we will create a texture like this in this cell, and when it is seamless we can repeat it right here again, and right here again, and right here again, and so on. So it will look clean later, but we don't have to create the entire texture or even geometry, but only one cell. So I will start out with a basic plane. Let's hop into edit mode, invert it, scale it on the x-axis and move those vertices down. Now let's extrude it on the z-axis. Bevel those two edges with Ctrl B, just like that. Probably move those faces right here a little bit more on the y-axis, like that. And now bevel those edges like that. And now what I'm doing here right now is adding depth to our object, and this depth will also later appear on our building and make it look more realistic. So yeah, I have now created depth with this bevel and the extrusion, and now I want to also create depth with some more elements right here and on the top. And yeah, so for that we will add a cylinder, rotate it on the x-axis by 90 degrees and make it a little bit more thin. And now for the texture to be seamless, we want to place it exactly on this line right here. So for that we will have to move it on the x-axis by exactly 1. And now if we repeat the pattern on this side again, we want to have the other part of this cylinder right here, so we will duplicate it on the x-axis by exactly -2. So now it sits exactly here, and yeah, I like it. Probably with L you can select the other one again by hovering over it and then scale both on the X and Z axis once again, like that. I like that. And yeah, now we want to have like a separation between the exact floors of the building. So I will add a cube, add the cube of course at the object that we are building right now. So grab it on the y-axis and scale it on the y-axis, and grab it on the y-axis once again, like that. And now as this cube isn't completely round like the cylinders, it has to be at an exact position right here on the top. So here, grab it on the z-axis and duplicate it once again on the y-axis, so it also sits right here at the bottom, so it's seamless between the top and the bottom. So now we want to create a displacement map of that geometry that we just created. Yeah, probably I'm also going to bevel those faces. And how do we do that? So first we go into the shading tab, probably set the render engine to cycles and GPU compute if you have a GPU, and go into render mode, and then add a new material and delete the principled BSDF and add a gradient texture. And if you have node regular enabled, press Ctrl T like that, and then Ctrl Shift click so you can see the texture. And now we want this gradient to be from our bottom, like this very bottom face, right to the very top. So how do we do that? We first rotate the texture on the x-axis by 90 degrees. Probably not. Then probably the y-axis. Yeah, like that. No, probably the y-axis only. Yeah, like that. So now the gradient texture is toward the z-axis. And then by adjusting the position, the location, we can move it all the way up. So now you can already see we have like the bottom part more dark than the top part, and we can increase that one with adding a color ramp. Move it right in between and now adjust the sliders so the bottom part is very black and the top one is very white, like that. And now we have the complete spectrum between black and white used for our depth information. So now we want to transport this out of Blender. And how do we do that? So we will add a camera right here and clear all the rotation to 0. Then grab it on the Z-axis, and then what's very important now is that you change the type from perspective to orthographic. So that way the geometry information from the building is perfectly projected on the camera and not with some perspective with which real life cameras would have. So yeah, now in the next step we want to set the resolution to 1000 by 1000. So we have a perfect square, which is also our basic texture that we created, our normal cell that we are going to repeat later. And now if you tap numpad 0, you will go into the camera view, and then you just want to adjust the orthographic scale right here to 2. So now the camera's part, or the part that the camera sees, is perfectly aligned with the cell that we created. And now we can just render it out with F12 and save it somewhere. We will find it later on. So that's perfect. So for now we can delete the camera and probably hide that depth thing that we created right now. So probably we can reuse it later. And now we will add the basic shape that we want our building to have. I will add a very simple shape, like first a cube and then probably adjust it a little bit, but really nothing too crazy, as we want it to be very simple so the computer can render it very fast. Yeah, probably something like that. So now we're going to go into the shading tab, probably also add a bevel texture, which always looks pretty nice. It doesn't need to have a lot of segments, as it will be in the background, but just for this edge right here, so you can see it very good. That's very useful. So now when you go into the shading tab, probably add a sky texture right here as the color of the environment right here, and set the strength to like 0.1, something like that, and then rotate the sun so we can have a look at our texture very well. So what we are now going to do is add a new texture, probably name it building, like that, and then add the depth texture that we created before. So Ctrl A and image texture, like that, and then with Ctrl Shift click we will project it on there, and then we can go into edit mode and press A to select all the faces, and then U, and then Smart UV project right here. Okay, and yeah, I like that. Yeah, now we will press Ctrl T right here once again and just adjust the scale. So now we can already see that our pattern gets repeated again and again, but what we also see is that it's upside down and sometimes also like sideways, and we can fix that by going into edit mode and yeah, going into the shader preview, and then now by selecting the faces right here in the 3D view, and then here in the UV editor press A to select all, and then rotate them so they are perfectly aligned. With Control you can make the rotation like snappy so it gets perfectly aligned, and then also repeat that for the other faces that you want to be in the right direction. And then if you want to be very detailed, you can also make these faces align with each other. So yeah, grab it on the y-axis and press Shift for it, aligning it very precisely like that. And now you have them, yeah, more or less perfect aligned. Yeah, you get the point. You can do that so it looks even better, but if it's in the background you also don't have to do it. And then now we're going into shading view once again, and now what I'm first going to add is a brick texture. Let's move that one a little bit down and press Ctrl Shift click on that one, and then Ctrl T, and then you want to adjust the rotation so that the pattern is like projected like normal bricks would be on a building. So in my case that's adjusting the X rotation to -90 degrees, and then adjusting the Y rotation to 45 degrees probably. Yeah, I think so. So yeah, that's the way it looks at my example, but it could also be different with yours. And then you can also adjust the scale, so yeah, it has the scale you like. And then for the color you can also adjust those to your liking. So I want my wall to be like a little bit yellowish like that. And yeah, so now that's our basic wall texture. We will plug that into the principled BSDF and press Ctrl Shift T, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with that one. Let's make that one a little bit brighter like that, and then probably also set the roughness to something like that. Now for adding the windows that we just created, we will add a color ramp like that, Ctrl Shift click, and then we now want to isolate the part that we want to be a window. So we will push that white slider all the way up to here like that, and now we will add another principled BSDF, and we want that to be like glassy, so something like that, and very little rough, probably a little bit rougher like that than that, but yeah, something like that. And now we want to add a mix shader, and we will mix those two with that color ramp. So that's exactly the false way, but like that. And now we have already the windows, but we now also want probably some parts of those to be another color than the basic brick texture. So we will duplicate all of those once again, Ctrl+Shift+click, and then probably make those a little bit darker and adjust the color a little bit. And now add another color ramp, also connected to the texture that we created, Ctrl+Shift+click, and now we want to isolate the parts that we want to have this other wall to be. So push the black slider all the way up to here, just like that. And now we Shift D, duplicate the mix shader and mix those up with that texture, just like that. So you can see the result very clearly. So I'm going to make those darker, something like that. So I like that pretty much. And now we want to add the depth, of course. So we will add a displacement, plug it into the displacement, and our texture into the height value. So from the far away you think it's actually geometry that you created, but it's actually not, but it's only a texture. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that result. Probably make the glass a little bit darker, but that's basically the entire process behind creating these buildings. And yeah, from like very near it you see that it's like flat and just a texture, but like from a little bit more away you don't see it. And yeah, I think that's a very great method. So if you like the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and probably follow me also. And yeah, bye bye.